Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beelance and Tennis. As always, joined here with my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. I can tell you some stats about Mr. Carlitos Alcaraz, but the stats don't really need to tell us that he's a big match player. We already know he's a big match player. Carlos winning Monte Carlo earlier this morning. We're recording this Sunday afternoon in the States. He's now 6-1 in Masters 1000 finals and 4-0 in major finals. I'm not a mathematician, but that adds up to 10-1 in the biggest events of the year. Again, we didn't need this result this morning to tell us that, but he's been a big match player from day one, Steve.
Yeah, no, you described it well. It's just his mentality. It's funny enough, we see him get picked off at times prematurely, you might say. I mean, fair enough, Jack Draper played great against him in Indian Wells, but it was a shocker to see him lose to Goffin in Miami. He can have these kinds of losses, lost early at the Open last year. But the deeper he goes and the closer he gets, and you put him in the finals, it's like his 5-set record. I think he's lost one 5-setter in maybe 14 matches. So that just tells you, that he likes high pressure stakes. Now today, David, I have to say, he caught a bit of a break. I think he was going to win anyway, in fairness, but Musetti had a tremendous week. Musetti gets broken in the first game of the final against Carlos. Carlos makes a startling forehand down the line passing shot winner right out of his playbook. Typical Carlos audacity in the best sense of the word. And you think, oh boy, he's off and running. They have a long second game, and Musetti breaks back. The next thing you know, Musetti's up 4-1, and he wins the set 6-3. He played a really good set that sort of exemplified the way he'd been playing the entire week. He'd had a lot of escapes and comebacks, and 3 times he lost 6-1 first sets and came back to win those matches, including the previous 2 against Tsitsipas and De Minaur. But still, finally he gets off to the start he wanted, because he also lost another match this week, his opening round match. He lost another opening set. So there were 4 opening sets that he lost in the tournament, came back, but he was gaining confidence. So he gets the start he wants finally. The only match he'd won in straight sets all week was, oddly enough, over Berrettini, his countryman, 3-3. But otherwise, it had been a struggle, but it seemed like his form was getting better and better, and it was a great semi with De Minaur. Yeah. And to have that set in his pocket looked great. Carlos, the next thing you know, you could see. We've seen, David, you mentioned how he's a big match player. You started our segment that way, and there's no doubt about it. A lot of it depends on his mentality, in my estimation, because sometimes you see him fretting and yelling at himself and a bit frantic, and then you know that he's not enjoying himself, and you can sense that he might be more vulnerable. But many, many other instances where it's just the opposite, where he's losing and he's kind of starts smiling, not mockingly toward his opponent, but he's smiling toward his corner like, I've still got this. I can still do this. I'm not worried. And so when he got the break to go up 2-love in the second set, he screamed out kind of joyously, but it kind of told you he was confident. And in the first 3 games of the second set, he lost 4 points and he was rolling. But then at the end of the set is when Musetti came up a bit lame. Something was going on with the hip flexor or the upper right leg. He still doesn't even know exactly what it is, but you could see he started stretching it out. And by the beginning of the first game of the third, it looked a little worrisome. By the second game, you kind of knew he was shot. And they got the trainer and physio out after he went down 3-love, and it was pretty hopeless. And to his credit, David, he didn't do what some players have done in the past, where he decided, I can't possibly win this match. My mobility is too severely restricted. I'm quitting. He played it out. He lost the set 6-love. That was classy of him, I thought, because his movement was hampered so badly, and Carlos just had to basically keep the ball in play and move him around a little bit. It was over. Now, I happen to believe, David, that Carlos would have won this match regardless, that he would have the momentum already before Musetti got hurt, but we would have had a far more competitive third set. And it was a sad way for Musetti to end the week after all he'd done. On the other hand, he's now backed up all the progress he made last year. You remember that great phase when he had pushed Djokovic to his limits at the French before losing, and then won Queens, semis of Wimbledon, semis of the Olympics. It was a great stretch where he kind of established himself as a bona fide top 20 player. Now he's pushing to get to the top 10. So he still takes a lot away from this week. I enjoyed watching him immensely.
Great week. I want to hit on a point you said a little bit earlier, and I think you'll agree with me on this. You know, when Carlos gets picked off a little early, when he loses a little bit early, it's almost to me the more credit to the big three on the greatness of the big three that they lost so rarely, so early, as it is a deficiency to Carlos or anyone in this new era. Because again, I mean, we may never see the statistics and what the big three ever did again. And to me, that's more greatness to them versus it's a little bit normal that Carlos doesn't win everything every week.
Yeah, fair point. And I think it's one that he tried to make in a slightly different way from you, but essentially the same message where everybody always expects me to win every time, basically trying to say, I can't do that. We don't know what Carlos Alcaraz is going to look like 4 or 5 years from now. We don't know what the 26, 27-year-old Alcaraz, 25-year-old. It may be that by then he is attaining the consistency that the big three always did. But at this age, we just forget that he's still not yet 22 and that he's got 4 majors in his pocket and 6 Masters 1000s now. And it's phenomenal what he's achieved, but he has had those bad days. And we knew Roger was an artist in his way, but I think Carlos is even more of an artist. And the one big thing he has battling himself sometimes is trying to go for the fanciest shots all the time. He can't resist it at times. He plays what can be and that was going on in the first set, by the way. He was beating himself a lot in the first set, taking nothing away from Musetti's level. Carlos was missing pretty flagrantly at times, and you wondered about some of the shot selection. But that's what makes him so much fun to watch. I do think it may well change 3-4 years down the road. And that will be interesting to see if he becomes more percentage oriented. Does he sacrifice any of his greatness? Does that hurt him in some ways? I don't think it will, but I'm just interested to see how he develops, because we know with Sinner, for instance, Sinner is a strict percentage player, a great player. And he's probably not going to change very much. He knows exactly what he wants to do out there, and he doesn't like to take unnecessary risks. Carlos is different, but will Carlos will he change over the years? I'm fascinated to see what he becomes that way.
What's clear, and Carlos has said this many times now in various press conferences, is that when he's enjoying himself on the court, that's when he plays his best. And when he times to
Yeah.
when there's times where he tends to get away from that a little bit, is often the times where he may struggle. So that's probably
Yeah,
the most
right. And
important
he
thing
was,
with him right now.
yeah, sorry, David. Sorry to interrupt. That was the mindset all week, by the way, not just today.
Yeah.
Because he started off the tournament against Cerundolo. He had a tough draw there, and
Yeah.
Cerundolo took the first set, and then he blitzed him, and he just dealt with it. And he wasn't always happy, but he was handling it remarkably well. And the joyous Carlos was out there quite a bit over the course of the week. We saw that quite often, and it does make a difference. And then he's so gifted, and he's such a fighter that if he's in the right frame of mind, in a positive frame of mind, and fighting that way with all those great traits that he's got, he's pretty hard to beat. And when you and I have had this discussion before, David, it's still hard to gauge. I mean, you've got a 2-time Wimbledon champion here. He's won the U.S. Open, still striving for that Australian. He's won the French. What's his best surface? I'm still not sure. I mean, this proves again how great he is on clay, but to me, he's almost equally dangerous on all the surfaces. I heard one of the commentators say earlier they thought maybe his worst surface was hard courts. I'm not prepared to say that. He's had some of the more shocking losses on hard, but some of that is circumstantial. I still think his game is absolutely fine for hard. I think the beauty of his game is how it has translated to all of the courts.
Could not agree more with that statement. Yeah, his game transforms beautifully across any and all surfaces. I want to go back to earlier in the week because there were several matches, and I want to state some interesting stats and get your take on it. I mean, on Tuesday, the round of 32, you got Sasha Zverev, who has been struggling, and you have his first match is against a guy named Matteo Berrettini. I mean, not an ideal first match for someone who's already struggling. He loses to Berrettini 2-6, 6-3, 7-5. Sasha has a 6-7 win-loss record, Steve, since the Australian Open semifinal when he had that retired win versus Novak. Berrettini couldn't parlay that into his next match. He lost to Musetti, who, as we just said, had a tremendous week making the final. But Sasha Zverev, I mean, he's got to get out of this funk. And again, it's not an embarrassment to lose to Matteo Berrettini. He's a heck of a player. Tough draw, no doubt. But I don't know if it's the pressure with Sinner being out, right? That, okay, this is your chance, Sasha, to really get number one. I don't know if that's on his mind, but he has not played nowhere near the level where he's capable, and he's the first to admit that.
Yeah, David, I'm sure you remember after he lost that Australian final, and that's the key to what everything you were just talking about right there. To me, it all goes back to Melbourne. It's not that he was ashamed to lose to Sinner. I mean, Sinner's the best player in the world, but it was another setback. You know, he thought he could have won the 2020 US Open, and he was up 2 sets in a break on team, and he lost in 5, and he lost the French final to Carlos last year, despite leading 2-1. So he figured, I think in his mind, he thought it was his time, with no disrespect towards Sinner. But I think going in, he convinced himself, this is it. I'm ready. I'm rested. He only had to play the 1 set against Novak in the semis. So everything was set up for him to at least physically be at his best. And he didn't play terribly well in that final. I honestly think it's lingered, because I have no other explanation. He did chide himself, David, for the number of leads that he's let get away in all the tournaments that he's played since Australia. He did go out into the clay for a while, which I think was a mistake. I think he would have been better off to just stick with hard courts through Miami instead of taking the money and going to the clay court events. And he's entitled to make good money at those tournaments. I get it, but I don't think it was the wisest professional decision. So that's part of it. And second is, I think, the lingering effects of losing a third major final, a US, a French, and now an Australian. And I think that one really bugged him, and he got down on himself. And he claimed in subsequent interviews that he had gotten over it and that he was believing himself. But he's had a terrible record. This Berrettini match was sort of typical, David, our Fees played a great match against Arthur Fees in Miami, but Zverev had 3-1 in the third there. This time, as you just alluded to, 6-2 first set against Berrettini. And I thought, okay, now he's going to come through. No, even broke back to get to 5-all in the third after Berrettini served for it and lost 2 games in a row from there. So he's in these matches, often in a commanding position, but he's not winning them. And I still say it relates back to Australia, but I also say that barring injury, he'll turn the corner one of these days soon, and we'll see him start winning a lot of matches. Whether that leads to a major, I have my doubts right now.
Well said. Yeah, we'll see how this how long this does linger, or for his sake, hoping he can right the ship here, because he's struggling. Another interesting result, and I know, Steve, you'll have thoughts on this. Wednesday, Tabilo beats Novak Djokovic 6-3, 6-4. Tabilo came in with a 2-9 record, but has beaten Novak for the second time fairly routine. I think they were all in straight sets, actually. Again, he didn't parlay his next. He didn't parlay another result after he lost to Grigor in 3 sets his very next match. Where are you with Novak? Are you still on course where he can really find some greatness this year? Maybe win another slam, maybe make a final, or are you starting to get concerned with Novak's level right now?
I mean, you had to be concerned as someone who's admired him enormously, as I have, and who's been convinced, particularly when I saw the run that he made in Australia, where he beat Lehechka and Mahach and 2 good players there, and then the big win over Carlos before the injury cost him against Zverev, and he had to retire. But now he's lost his opening round match in 3 of his last 4 tournaments. The one bright spot was Miami, which was right before this one, that ended a week before Monte Carlo, where he did get to the final, and he lost that tough match in the finals in 2 tie breaks. And so it was still largely a positive week. Disappointing not to win the title, but a good run to get to the final. I think he made a mistake in some ways. He said afterwards, I didn't expect to play well, but I didn't think I'd played this badly. This was the worst. He doesn't usually talk that way. He also said before he even played a match that he wasn't expecting very much, and that he had thought about not playing the tournament. So that told me, why are you even messing with it? I think he would have been better off to skip Monte Carlo and maybe enter one of these events this week. Could have gone to Barcelona, perhaps, or wherever the other tournaments being played. He had options, and Munich, I think would have been better than this. But the thing that was troubling to me was that he just didn't seem to care. He looked listless out there. That's not Novak. So I don't know what to make of that. He had a little spark at the beginning of the match, David. He broke serve in the first game of the match and gave it a little fist pump. But from there, it was a 3-4 match, and he really didn't play well at all. And he never broke him again. And he just didn't look like he believed it all. And you could see his corner. They looked distraught. Not Murray wasn't there, but the other guys were. And they just looked like they didn't feel like they had anything to offer him. So I think I don't give up by any means. I don't think he has. I still say a major is very possible for him, but I think he's got to start winning, playing more consistently, and treating every match like it's a Wimbledon final between now and the French, so he can get back. It's amazing how losing can become just as big a habit as winning. It just amazes me at this level. You think of how, as recently as 23, David, 2023, he wins 7 out of 12 tournaments he plays in the year, 3 of the 4 majors. He wins 2 Masters 1000s and the year-end championship. So that's what, of the 7 titles, 6 of them were huge. And then it's been a struggle since. Understandably, because he's won 24 majors, he's achieved everything he could possibly want. Most weeks at number 1, 8 year-end number 1s, everything in his pocket like that. But I still think his standard is high, and I don't think he's going to accept these kinds of losses much longer. So to me, it's just going to come to sort of a crunch in his mind. He'll figure out one way or another, do I want to do this any longer or do I not? But we're not going to have the answers until at least we get through Wimbledon to see what kind of intensity he brings to Roland Garros and Wimbledon, whether he can at least make a strong showing that even if he doesn't win one of those, maybe it's the Open, or maybe he does win Wimbledon. But it's understandable. It's understandable. This one was definitely a match he'd like to forget.
There's just a lot of really, really, really good players and a lot of really, really good young players as well. I'm going to ask you this question pre-French Open. I want to see him play a few more tournaments on clay, which hopefully he will, and get your thoughts on if he can make a legitimate run in Roland Garros. I'm not going to ask you that now because we both need to see some things prior to that tournament.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that, though. He didn't play well. He did have a semi in Monte Carlo last year. He lost to Ruud in the semis. Then he didn't play well on the clay all the way up to Roland Garros. And then he won a couple of really exhilarating 5-set matches at the French against, he had the win over Musetti and then Cerundolo, and then he had to pull out of the tournament with a knee injury, but he found it. You could see the spark. He won at Roland Garros at the Olympics with the great win over Carlos in the summer. He won Roland Garros in 21 and 23 also. So recently he's played so well there. He's got a lot to draw on. So I don't think it'll depend entirely on what he does between now and then, but I think he just needs it generally for his confidence. It's too many. And also you got to get back into the rhythm of playing matches. He had that in Miami. He got through a few early on where he was second set tie breaks against players that weren't really capable of beating him. And then he started to really play well. Musetti was one of the people he beat very badly, along with Dimitrov. And, I feel like that was so good for him to just get back that feeling of winning match after match after match. And he needs that in 1 or 2 of these tournaments. And I think, I suspect he'll do that. He's had a great history in Rome and Madrid. He's played well over the years. So I think he definitely would like to. He's going to need at least a semi in one of those 2 tournaments, and get the matches, just get the match play.
All right, a couple more players that I wanted to throw your way. I'm a fan of Grigor Dimitrov. It's interesting. He's made 11 Masters 1000 quarterfinals before turning 28, and he's made 11 Masters 1000 quarterfinals after turning 28. Makes the quarterfinals here. Was shocked, not that he lost against Alex de Minaur, but he lost 6-0, 6-0 in 44 minutes, Steve. I did not hear the presser after. Was there anything where he was not feeling great or was injured or whatnot? I mean, that's just a shocking result. Again, not the fact that he lost, but again, he's played so well these last few years in the latter stages of his career. And to lose to a very good Alex de Minaur, again, no embarrassment losing that, but 6-0, 6-0 in 44 minutes, that's a bizarre result.
Well, the 44 minutes tells you something, because even with 6 game sets, 6 games in each set and 11 love. You'd expect there to be some long deuce games. We didn't really have that. Most of these were at 30, at 15, at love. The games were he seemed to have no patience in the rallies. I watched it. He didn't react much, and it was the worst possible guy to do this against because Dimonor was in that. He had put up that brick wall from the back of the court and wasn't missing and was bearing down hard and wasn't taking anything for granted. And then he had come off a 2-2 win over Medvedev, so he was hot, and that carried him right through the first set. By the way, of that semifinal against Musetti, a 6-1 set. So one
He was
stage,
rolling. He was destroying people in sets.
Yeah, he won 17 games in a row at one stage across 3 matches, and so you have to weigh that in. But Grigor didn't have much life out there, and I just wonder, in his case, maybe he doesn't have that Djokovic capacity, or Roger, or Rafa, and a lot of the guys and even Stan, who's still out there. And by the way, just a brief reference to show you how strange tennis is, David. Stan Wawrinka, 40-year-old Stan Wawrinka, is playing Tabilo in the first round. And he won the first set 6-1 and had chances to close him in the second, lost at 7-5, and then got to 5-all in the third and lost at 7-5. That same guy goes out and beats Djokovic in the next round. I mean, that's tennis. Yeah. But to get back to your other point, I think that I don't know exactly how to weigh it. All I know is that Grigor didn't look injured. He didn't look hurt. He didn't whine. He didn't complain. He didn't get angry. But it was kind of embarrassing because
he didn't say anything at the handshake line either. Like he didn't say he didn't look disgusted or told Alex anything.
No,
it was just it could have been just a first class beating, and that's what happened.
It was a first class beating, but he really didn't do himself justice either. I mean, at some point along the line, you find enough spark to win a few games, and I honestly think Dimonor expected that and just didn't want to let him into that. It was very professional on his part, but it was sad to see someone of Grigor's stature, who we've just seen in the semis of Miami, having a great tournament in Miami, and we expect certain things from him. Now, I hope it's not. I guess what I'm saying is I hope the age that maybe the recovery process doesn't appear to be as good as it once was, and he's had some days like that this year too. Not this bad, right. But I hope that it hasn't reached the point where he can't recover fast enough anymore, and we start seeing similarly decisive losses. I hope not, right? Because he's such a joy to watch.
Such a joy to watch. All right, you mentioned earlier Arthur Fils. Only 2 players have managed to reach the quarterfinals at Indian Wells, Miami, and Monte Carlo in the same year before turning 21. It's him and Rafa Nadal. So obviously, good company to be in. He's had a great year. He's someone that. He's going to be a problem for other players for the next several years if he stays healthy.
Well, listen, that was the pivotal match for Carlos this week. That match was just a blockbuster. And Fils came out against Carlos, went up 2 breaks early, David, 3-love, and then he fended him off the rest of the set, won at 6-4. And then at 5-all, and they had break points in the first and fifth games of the second set, couldn't salvage those. They get to 5-all. And he's got Carlos at love 40, and you could feel it. It was almost palpable. You could feel the tension as those rallies unfolded. And Carlos, to his great credit, was going to give away nothing at that stage. He was going to make Fils earn it. But Fils made 3 unforced errors. On one of them, on the third break point, Carlos defended well. But every time, Fils started by missing a backhand return off a second serve, and then he missed a few inside-out forehands. Carlos holds, wins the set. Fils goes up 3-1 in the third, and then Carlos ran off 5 straight games. Carlos played very well down the stretch there. But to me, the bigger chance than 3-1 in the third was actually the 5-all love 40 in the second, because he could have been serving for the match. And you could see the moment overcame him a bit, but he's so close, David. In addition to the stats you mentioned, you just feel like Fils can walk out on the court against anybody in the world right now and hold his own.
And people remember the Miami match against Medvedev. That was a third set tiebreaker. That was, what was it, 10-8 or something in the break?
Yeah, no, he played great. And look, he's at that stage now where you just feel like, sure, he's not gonna blow everybody off the court, but he's got all the artillery. He's got all the shots. I feel like his conditioning could still improve a bit, and it will. But and he gets angry. He smashed a racket at one point out in the Carlos match, and the crowd didn't come down too hard on him. They understood. He'll do things like that now, and that's maybe a little bit of immaturity, but I don't put much stock in it. I think it's just he's a very emotional guy, and but the way his tennis is progressing, very exciting.
Very exciting. All right, last thing before we wrap up here.
Oh,
Kind
a
of
quick,
kind of
just
off.
a quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick interjection before the last thing, because I know I'll forget it. You'll ask me the last thing, and we'll wrap up. And I'll say, wait a minute. I want just a brief word about, to me, the match of the week was the semifinal between De Minaur and Musetti, because they started off, the weather was bad, the rain was threatening, but it didn't get bad until the end of the first set, which of course was won easily by De Minaur. Then in the heavier conditions, Musetti started to find his range, and he started to really use every inch of the court, and he lifted his game up dramatically, and he eventually wins that set. And then they go to the third set, and twice Musetti's up a break, twice De Minaur breaks back, and from 3-5 down, De Minaur goes up 6-5, and he's 2 points away from winning. Musetti aces him down the tee at 134 miles an hour, and eventually goes to the tiebreak, which is locked at 4 points all before Musetti wins the last 3 points and closes out a tremendous match. I just wanted to say that, to me, was, aside from Fees and Alcaraz, maybe it's a tie for first, two great matches, but those are the matches that will linger with me for a long time from
And
Monte
you
Carlo.
saw, I think it was after the quarterfinal, actually. I think Musetti's fiance. I mean, she was brought to tears. I mean, you're going through it
Yeah,
when you're sitting in the players box. I mean, you're
yeah,
living and dying in each point. It was really really something to see. But yeah, that semifinal was ridiculous. I
yeah. It
think
was.
a piece of good news off the court for a lot of tennis fans, and Stefanos Tsitsipas did not confirm it, but there were reports that Goran Ivanisevic will be his coach after Roland Garros, especially, with Goran serve and everything leading up to the grass court season. I think that could go very, very well if they both click together.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think it'll be a different chemistry than it was with Ivanisevic and Djokovic, obviously,
Yes.
because Novak would vent a lot with Goran, and Goran understood that. I don't think you'll see that from Tsitsipas. Different personality, but
Different tennis
not,
player, too.
yeah, not just the serve. You're right. Obviously, Goran can help anybody with their serve, but it's just his. He's had some experience now, and he showed he did a great job with Novak, and he'd done a good job with others in the past, including the 2014 U.S. Open champion Marin Cilic, and he'd worked with a bunch of guys. He really knows what he's doing now, and this is what we've all been wanting for Stefanos, is to
Yes.
find somebody of that kind of stature that he really respects. He had it in the past with Philippoussis, but his father was still in the picture, so that just didn't work out. But I hope this is true. I was a little concerned that he didn't confirm it. I'm not sure why he wouldn't confirm it, but I'm still hoping it happens. That could really, and this is at a crucial stage for him, David,
Yes.
because he was the defending champion. He also, of course, won that first set from Musetti. Musetti came back and beat him 6-4 in the third after Stefanos won the first set 6-1. And that was a blow because he's won this tournament 3 times, including being the defending champion. And clay is his terrain. It's where he's had his best results overall, although he's been in an Australian Open final too and had great success elsewhere. So he really wants to do the best he can on clay. And then if whenever Goran comes aboard, which might not be until after the clay, then there's a chance to finally maybe do something at Wimbledon and have better hard court success in the second half of the year. He could make a big difference at a stage where you feel like it's a pivotal stage of Tsitsipas's career. You don't want to see him relegated to being a player ranked somewhere between 12 and 17 in the world, which he's in danger of having happened to him. I don't want that. And I think if Goran gets in the picture, it won't happen.
Just for some of the younger viewers who may not have watched Goran play, Goran was a lefty. Obviously, that helped with his serve. But Goran also had a good slice backhand, but he hit 2 hands. Tsitsipas is 1 hand, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see,
Oh,
how
yeah. I
that
think that.
translates. But
Yeah, good point. But I don't think that'll be an issue. I mean, he's dealt with. He can coach one-handed backhand players, and
right,
I don't know how much he's going to do. By the way, technically. I think it's more tactical. It's,
Tactical for sure, for sure.
strategic, tactical, those kinds of things. So it's at that level. That's what the coaches tend to be more
Yeah,
honed
I just
in on.
didn't know if a lot of the younger players had seen him and his style of play as well. So obviously
Yeah.
a lot of serve and volley,
Well,
but he was good from the
they
baseline, Steve. He was a good baseline player.
yeah, no, especially his backhand.
Yeah,
Forehand could get a little bit streaky, but it's a beautiful two-hander.
yeah.
And yeah, look, I think if the younger people in the audience went and watched him on YouTube right now, they'd be pretty impressed, especially by the serve. And
Yes.
we talked about Pete Sampras having the best second serve of all time, but Goran, and that's because his was so reliable. He'd go for a lot of big second serves and second serve aces and serve very few doubles. Goran would do something very similar. But he had a tendency to serve maybe a few more doubles, but it was very unnerving to play him and have, you could be 5, 6, 30, 40 set points, second serve, and he aces you down the tee,
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
he won Wimbledon, the one in '92 when he lost to Andre. I think he had 43 aces and he had a record. He had over 200 aces, I think, during that fort.
yeah,
Yeah.
he had 206 aces.
Well,
And
there you go. 206. I knew you were going to be right on the
yeah,
nose with that one.
no, but it's like, that's the kind of thing. He can serve 30 aces a match. He
Yeah.
could do that on the grass. And he did it something quite similar when he finally won it in 2001 as a wild card. His numbers were pretty close to the 92, but they was so fitting, David, because here he loses a 5-set final to Agassi in 92. He lost a 5-set straight sets to Sampras in the 94 final, but 5 against Pete in the 98 final. And that, I think, as the next couple of years unfolded, he's thinking to himself, my chances may be over. And then to get that wild card and come in there and knock off the players that he did and win it eventually over Rafter in a 5-set final was spectacular.
All right. This week we got two 500 events on the ATP side, Munich and Barcelona. Munich, you got Sasha, top seed. Ben Shelton, who hasn't had the best results, is the second seed. I think the more deeper field is clearly in Barcelona. You got Carlos, who, you think after winning Monte Carlo, is he gonna play? But it's in Spain, it's Barcelona. He's probably gonna play. If it was anywhere else, maybe not. But I think he plays Ethan Quinn, who just qualified today. You got Casper Ruud, Demonar, Tsitsipas, Davidovich Fokina, who has had some really good results
Yes,
too.
yeah,
It's a deeper field. That's going to be an interesting tournament, Steve.
it will be. It will be. Yes, you put your finger on it. Carlos can't pull out unless if he had legitimately hurt himself today
Right.
and he had an injury, then everybody would understand. Otherwise, he's got to do it. He did go through a lot of stress and strain, losing a lot of sets this week. It worked hard, but I think he'll be okay. I think he's going to come in there kind of
Maybe a
relaxed.
Wednesday start. Maybe a Wednesday start if they
Yeah, I
can.
would think a Wednesday start, but
If
he'll
they
be
can.
relaxed because he's come off the title run, gives him the confidence, the joy is there, and so I suspect he'll turn it very likely win that title as well. Yeah, the field is good. It's not going to be any kind of done with any kind of sweeping ease, but I think he's on a high right now. And the thing is, we can't underestimate what the Spanish crowds mean to him.
Right.
Just the way they did to Rafa in the past. It's not that he's built up a Rafa aura, but he's getting there. He's getting there, and I think that will help him too, because I think he enjoys performing in front of them, and we've seen that quite a bit in the last few years.
Well, this was fun, Steve. We went around 35 minutes. We're going to do this again next week and we'll discuss more results. Thanks again for your time. This was awesome.
Thank you, David.